Good evening. It is 6:31 and we're ready to start the Platting Board for September 6th, 2023. May I have, we'll call this to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Don Porter.
Present.
Ryan Morman.
Present.
Zach Young.
Present.
Thomas Gould.
Present.
Stacy Wessel.
Present.
Jessica Smith.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. So, we move on to approvals. We'll need to have the action summaries and the minutes. So the action summaries, motion to approve. Do we need a motion for the action summaries?
Do you
Doesn't-
have consent agenda on there? No. Sorry. I might be jumping ahead. No. Just the minutes.
All right.
Yes, the minutes.
Just a motion, I need a motion to approve the minutes, please. It's been moved by Ms. Jessica Smith and seconded by Mr. Ryan Morman for the minutes of Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023. Please vote.
Actually, just gonna-
Or just,
Yeah.
do we have any corrections to the minutes?
Any objections?
No objections. The minutes are approved. Special order of business. Do we have any disclosures?
Yes.
Mr. Gould.
I was absent from the last meeting and will not be voting on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Any other disclosures? Okay, seeing none. We have the informational items for the abbreviated plat action summaries for 7/31/23, 8/7/23, 8/14/23, and 8/21/23. And the motion to approve the informational items?
No.
No.
Consent agenda, sorry.
Consent agenda, okay. We'll get to that. Okay, so we will move on to the consent agenda. And we have only on the consent agenda a resolution for approval. We have Resolution 2023-017, which has a related case of S12730 on the consent agenda. And so please vote on the consent agenda. Motion to approve, please. Moved by Mr. Ryan Morman, seconded by Mr. Zach Young. Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. We have no old business. We will move on to new business. So I will need to read the public hearing process. Thank you. The Platting Board meets each month for the first and third Wednesday, except holidays, as regular meetings. If the Platting Board fails to complete its agenda for its regular meetings, the Board carries over the remainder of the agenda to the following meeting. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is: 1, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. 2, the persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of his/her representatives, will be given 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., will be given 5 minutes. Individuals will be given 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any party of interest wishing to file appeal shall first file with the planning director within 7 days of the board's decision made on the record. a written notice of intent to appeal in accordance with AMC 21.03.050A.4.a. Following approval of the written findings of fact and decision, any party of interest may, within 20 days, file an appeal by filing a notice of appeal and paying the appeal fee and deposit in accordance with Section 21.03.050. The notice of appeal must be filed with the planning director on a form prescribed by the municipality. If the appellant is not the applicant, the appellant notice of appeal shall include proof of service on the applicant. Good. Oh, sorry. We'll start with public hearings. And we have the public hearing for case S12739. May we have the staff presentation for this case?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property owner is requesting to vacate a 50-foot wide BLM right-of-way easement on the east boundary of subdivision Lot 3. He is seeking to remove an unnecessary easement to build a home. In 2000, the neighboring subdivision to the east vacated the other half of the easement with Plat 2000-92. There's an access easement on the west side of the property that also provides north-south access from the Seward Highway. That's pretty much it. The vacation request has been reviewed in accordance with the standards, and the 50-foot wide BLM easement is in excess to municipal needs. All the surrounding properties have adequate access from other streets and easements. These include Bushnell Road, Power Line Road, Stellar J Lane. None of the municipal or state reviewing agencies object to the vacation. So the department is recommending approval of the vacation of the 50-foot wide BLM right-of-way easement running north-south along the east boundary of Lot 3, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months and any time extensions. The department's also recommending approval for the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1 and 2 on pages 4 and 5 of the packet. And I don't have any other information to add. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of staff from the planning board? Thank you. Would the petitioner please come forward, state your name, and let us know if you'd like to reserve any time about. Oh, I'm sorry.
You just need to push the button toward lights. There you go.
Yes, good. It'll have a little red ring around it when it's lit up. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Green button. Okay, my name is Cy Tuelk. I am the owner of the lot in question and the petitioner. I'm requesting that this application be approved and this easement vacated. The Planning Commission has done a great job at creating a very thorough review alongside with the professional surveyor Buku Salez, who assisted me in this application. I appreciate the diligence that the Planning Commission has, or Planning Department has helped with there, and I'd like to reserve any additional time that I have for rebuttal, please.
Excellent. You have 9 minutes and 33 seconds for rebuttal. Thank you. Do we have any questions of the petitioner from the planning board? Ms. Wessel?
So my question is currently on the plot plan, there is a proposed gravel drive. Is that going to be used also by Lot 2, which is northeasterly behind you? Is that how
Yes.
they access it?
Yes, the top two lots, the top northern lots, currently access their property through that driveway. And it's already actually been in place. It's listed as proposed on the plot plan, but it's essentially there.
Any other questions of the petitioner? Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so now we open the hearing. We only as we close it, yes. Okay, so the hearing is now open for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, state and spell your name for the record. You'll want to press the little speaker-looking button with the half face on it. No, red ring will light up.
Oh, I gotta hit the-
There we go. All right, so state your name, please, and spell it for the record, please.
My name is Ed Powell, Powell, and I live in Lot 1 of the Pitzer subdivision, which is a 4-lot division, and quite small. The lots are all 3/4 of an acre each. 3 years ago, when it was purchased, we understood a A-frame was going to be built there, and we're really excited to have somebody to clean up the used lot. And then all of a sudden, this rusty old railroad car showed up right in the middle of the lot and right in the middle of the whole works. We felt there was a safety concern. With my neighbors, we found a spot to call in. We found out that I left a message. They responded with 2 phone calls, one concern that if there's any indication that a septic was putting in, then we needed to be notified. But the other was, I believe, from the Planning Commission that informed us that the railroad car was illegal. It has intended to be lived in and was moved in before they have a permit. And after 3 years, it's really bad. It's totally dominates the area. We have to deal with it. They live in town or something. And anyway, that was 3 years ago, and the hazard still exists. And my neighbor has 3 young boys. The oldest is just learning how to get out of the house and won't be out of the fenced-in yard soon. And this behemoth is 50 feet in front of the only entrance to their home. I understand that the Platting Board is not involved in the legality of some of these things, but what we're requesting is that the board delay the approval of this until it becomes legal, until the hazard has been removed, and we would be glad to approve and support any action of this nature. But until then, we'd like to see it become legal.
Okay, is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of the testifier? I've given everybody else the opportunity, so I have some questions. How does is this railroad car that you say, is it on this lot, Lot 3?
Yes. Yeah, it's right on the edge of Lot 3, real close to what I guess would be Lot 2. But yes, it's there.
And is it on the north side of the lot then?
Yes. Kind of the, correct. Directions are a little weird there.
Sir,
Yes.
is this the railroad car you're talking about? Do you see this?
I can't see it.
So it's actually in the... Yes. Okay. Okay, so it's documented.
It needs to be permitted to, in order to live in. If it's going to be lived in, it needs to be
And what lot do you live on?
1.
Lot 1A possibly?
I don't know, there was...
Right next to it?
I'm kitty corner to him.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Ed, we have another question for you. Thank you. Ms. Wessel.
Can you explain to me a little bit more exactly what this railroad car, how it is affecting planning or zoning, or what municipal codes it's breaking?
My understanding is that in order to bring a structure onto a lot that you intend on living in, that it needs to be permitted first. The idea being that I believe that they don't want to have something put in there that can't get permitted and have difficulties in that way, but nonetheless, they intend on living in this. I don't know, a family of 5 in a railroad car will be interesting, but nonetheless, it's going to be a long process to get this up to code and able to be permitted. And it's 3 years now. The hazard is still there, and that's where we are.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Right here.
Oh, Zach,
Yeah.
would you like to ask a question?
So I just
Yeah.
kind of wanted to give you my 2 cents. First of all, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I don't know if you've already tried to report this to the municipality, but that's really your recourse to, report it to the zoning department. I don't know if my fellow colleagues share the same sentiment. I understand your frustration, but these are kind of 2 separate conversations. And while there may be issues within the legality of having that structure on the lot, it doesn't restrict them from being able to merge the lots as they would like to. So I think that we will more than likely be, unless the staff has a different recommendation in light of these details, I will probably be moving towards approval, but I understand your frustration.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll get there.
I understand that. We understand completely. We're just, as part of the whole general approach in Bird Creek to try to get people up to speed, which has been a real battle over the years, we felt that this might be an approach to not refuse this, but to delay it until they become legal.
Thank you for your testimony.
Sure.
Does anybody else wish to come forward and testify? Would so then we move to rebuttal. So would you care to come and provide a rebuttal? You have 9 minutes and 33 seconds. Oh,
Hit the
you'll
green
need
button
to
inside.
turn on your mic. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, all right.
First time. Good job.
Green button. All right. Thank you for your testimony, Ed. I appreciate him sharing his thoughts on this. He's been a longtime member of the community and been in the Pitzer subdivision longer than anybody, so it's certainly appreciated that he shares his sentiments. I did start this vacation process around 3 years ago. As you know, it's a lengthy process, not just for me, but for people in general. It's understood that it could provide some frustration to others, and I appreciate that. But after the structure was, the railroad car was brought onto the property, I did work with land use, and there is a land use permit in place. HDL is working on a well and septic plan right now. The plot plan has been approved, so the only thing remaining for the land use permit is the well and septic permit that Deb Walkenfoss and them will review here shortly. HDL is finalizing that right now, and they'll have a 95% review within a couple weeks. And with that, everything will be above board. I had a structural engineer design the helical pile foundations, and it'll all be attached. I'm going to hire an inspector on my own to come and review everything throughout the process, just in order to make sure that not only is it safe as a structure, but that it retains the value for the effort that I put into it, as I'm sure you can understand. And with that, I would like to assure everyone in Bird Creek that it's not my intent to create any sort of hazard or dangerous structure, and I appreciate people sharing their thoughts directly with me. All of my contact information is available here, as well as through the letters I've sent out to the communities.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your rebuttal. Do we have any final questions of the petitioner from the board? No. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry?
I just have a question for staff. That's it.
Go ahead, Ms. Wessel.
The same question, I mean, I guess that's going around, is exactly what the existing railroad car is and its use, and if it's already been approved and permitted.
Through the chair, this is the issue of the railway car is new to us. I saw it on the as-built and on the plot plan, but in our pre-application meeting, we just said that he's going to go through the land use permit process. It'll be reviewed for its, with the land use permit, because he intends to build a house. My question, if I may, to Cy, so what's the railway car going to be used for? You kind of have an interesting one-story home plan. Maybe you could just kind of tell us what you want to use the railway car for, but also just out of interest, the shape of your home is different than others that we, it's not rectangle.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, so the railroad car, if you look at page 21, which is the preliminary plot plan that was submitted as part of the land use permit process, this plot plan was not required as part of this application, but it's submitted in order to provide additional information about what that land use permit is and how it'll work. As you can see under the notes, that the existing railroad car is to be moved and incorporated into the proposed one-story house. So you'll see the existing railroad car as it sits, and then if you could imagine it turning from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, that's where it'll sit upon the helical piles. And then the existing cabin that is in the southeast corner of the lot will be moved to the 16 by 20 structure that's connected via a vestibule to the railroad car. And the railroad car itself will be 2 bedrooms, and the cabin will be the utilities and kitchen and bathroom. And this will be our initial structure. After I'm able to get a certificate of occupancy for this, then we'll continue and add on, and we'll add the A-frame structure at that time through a second land use permit.
So thanks for the explanation. So yeah, I mean, he's proposed the railway car to be part of his home. It'll have to comply with turning and arm zoning. He'll have to get a land use permit. He's working on the well and septic approvals. I don't have any regulation that I could point to say that it is against our land use planning regulations, the zoning code, to convert a freight car or railroad car into a house. We don't have some sort of residential design standard that says that this cannot be made legal. I mean, if he were to, say, take a Connex and convert it into a home, but it was received a land use permit, then, for structural, electrical, plumbing, if it met all of the building code requirements, and received a land use permit, then I don't think that our community has a design standard prohibiting the conversion of this kind of structure into a house. So I don't have anything to say that this would not be allowed, but that determination would be through the land use permit process, not through the vacation of an easement. I think that's kind of the out, at least in the form of this meeting, because the planning board with an application for a preliminary plat isn't being asked to make determination about the legality of the railway car. But many thanks to the neighbor for caring enough about the community to come in and testify in this forum, because it's a pretty intimidating place to drive in from out of town and then come and speak here.
Excellent. Thank you all for your comments. With that, we will close the public hearing. What is the will of the body? We'll need a motion. It's been moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Zach Young. Ms. Smith, would you care to state your motion, please?
Sure. Motion to approve the vacation of a 50-foot wide BLM right-of-way easement running north-south along the east boundary of Lot 3, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months and any time extensions.
Great. Would you care to speak to your motion, please?
All of the information was in the packet, and as staff pointed out, the topic at hand here is the vacation right-of-way.
Mr. Young, would you care to speak to your motion? Your second.
I will be moving to approve this motion. That being said, or in support of this motion, because I believe that all of the standards have been met and that the current easement is in excess of municipal need, and therefore the owner should have the right to remove it. So I will be supporting this motion.
Great. Do we have any findings or discussion? Everybody else has been given the opportunity. I'll speak. So in this matter, I find that we are looking at two separate things of concern. One is the vacation of the easement, which is listed that, as others have noted, that it follows the municipal procedure for this process. The applicant has noted that they've gone through quite a bit of process, municipal process, to make it legal. He appears to understand the requirements, including making it safe, putting a foundation under the building, and he has a plan for it. It sounds rather unique, but there's nothing that says you can't do unique. It just has to pass safety code. So with that, I will urge people to vote in the positive. Thank you. Any other comments? Please vote. That motion has passed. May I have a second motion for the approval of the plat? It has been moved by Mr. Zach Young and seconded by Ms. Wessel. Mr. Young, would you care to state your motion?
Yes, I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1 and 2 on pages 4 and 5 of the staff report.
Great. Would you care to speak to your motion?
As previously stated, I believe that they have met the requirements to have this vacated, and I will be supporting this motion.
Excellent. Ms. Wessel, would you care to speak to your second?
I will be moving to support this motion. Along the eastern side, there is another easement, and that has also been vacated. So it seems like it is in conjunction with what is going on.
Excellent. Any findings or discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Thank you. That motion has passed. So we will move on to the next case. Our next case is case S12741, requesting to modify a plat note number 2 on plat number 84-140. May we have staff's presentation for this case?
Thank you, Chair. This is a request to modify plat note number 2 from plat 84-140, Spring Hill Estates Subdivision Addition Number 1, Block 1, Lot 5. The purpose of the petitioner's request is to allow access for a future detached garage with an accessory dwelling unit to permit a driveway to Jupiter Drive. Plat note number 2 currently reads as follows: there shall be no direct vehicular access to Jupiter Drive from lots 5, 6, and 10. The modification is to remove Lot 5 from that plat note to read there shall be no direct vehicle access to Jupiter Drive from lots 6 and 10. The modification of this plat note does not impact or alter vehicle access from lots 6 and 10. Lot 5 has existing frontage along the constructed portion of Jupiter Drive, which has been maintained by the existing property owners and meets the current standards for the limited access road area. Jupiter Drive terminates at the intersection with East 98th Avenue. The traffic engineering and right-of-way departments have no objection to the plat note modification. Reviewing agencies have no objections to this requested plat note modification and can be found in attachment 3. The Hillside Community Council did not provide comment, and one late comment was received. The following standards must be met for a modification of a plat note. Standard A is met. Conditions that required the plat note at the time of the plat have changed, as Lot 5 now has access to Jupiter Drive. At the time of the plat 84-104, lots 5, 6, and 10 had physical and legal access to Golden Spring Circle, and Jupiter Drive was not constructed to municipal standard, necessitating this plat note. Since the time of this plat, the neighborhood has improved this portion of Jupiter Drive, fronting Lot 5 to limited access road standards. The plat note will remain in effect for lots 6 and 10. Standard B is met. Modification of the plat note will not have negative effects on the neighboring properties. The modification of this plat note is only applicable to Lot 5 of Block 1, Spring Hill Estates Subdivision Addition Number 1. All lots will retain access directly to Golden Springs Circle. Standard C is met. Plat 84-140 will continue to meet the approval criteria for subdivision standards in 2103 200C9. Lot 5 will continue to have main access on Golden Spring Circle, and the petitioner will be required to get a driveway permit for access to Jupiter Drive, and will also need to get permission from their HOA, as their covenants have a restrictive Section 19 that restricts each lot to one driveway. The department recommends approval of the request to amend the plat note, subject to the conditions on page 3 of this report. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board to staff? Ms. Wessel?
Who maintains Jupiter Drive?
It's within a limited access road area, and it was stated that the neighborhood and neighboring property owners are within that management area.
Any other questions of staff? Okay. Would the petitioner please come forward, state your name, and if you'd like to reserve any time for rebuttal.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Karen Michelson, Michelson and Daughter Construction. I'm representing Eric Olson and his wife, Haiyan Zhu. I would like to reserve time for rebuttal when I won't be long at all. They are requesting to gain access to Jupiter Drive so that they can build a detached building with accessory living. There is a note on your deed restrictions, item number 19, that says each lot can only have one driveway. This driveway would not be entering into the subdivision, which would cause the need for two driveways. This driveway would be off of Jupiter Drive, which is completely separate. There are homeowners along Jupiter Drive that help take care of that, and our homeowner has volunteered to help contribute to the cost of maintaining that road above and beyond what the LURSA takes care of. Okay, if you have any other questions of me.
Do we have any questions of the petitioner from staff?
Just to
Mr.
clarify.
Young.
Just to clarify, is the lot itself within the Spring Hills subdivision?
Yes, the lot itself is within the Spring Hill subdivision.
But
And
the access that you're requesting would be on the Jupiter Drive side, which would be not in the subdivision?
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Any other questions of the petitioner? From the board? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have 9 minutes and 10 seconds for your rebuttal.
Thank you.
The hearing is now open for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, state and spell your name for the record. Apparently, there's no one that wishes to testify. Do you wish to make any final comments? Thank you. Do we have any final questions from the board for either the petitioner or the staff? Public hearing is now closed for this case. What is the will of the body? It's been moved by Mr. Young and seconded by Ms. Smith. Mr. Young, would you care to state your motion?
I move to approve the request to amend plat note number 2 for Spring Hills Estates Edition number 1, block 1, lot 5, per plat 84 through dash 140, subject to conditions 1 and 2 on page 3 of the staff report.
Would you care to speak to your motion?
Yes, seeing that staff has no problems here, I believe that I will be supporting this motion, and I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Ms. Smith, would you care to speak to the second?
No.
Okay. Do we have any findings? Everybody else has been given an opportunity. I will make the finding that while we have gone through the process of staff analysis and they have noted that it meets the conditions, I would also like to make the finding that there has been a distinction between the driveways, and the requirement for 2 driveways is noted to be only onto the circle. It's not specifically to a second driveway on Jupiter. So the distinction is clear in my mind, and I believe that should be for the record. Any other comments or findings? Please vote. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I do have one comment. The southern lots also are in support of this plat removal, and
Very good.
I do like that they're also in support of this. And they are also going to keep not having access as well, I guess the southern lots. So that's on page 14 and 15.
Thank you, Ms. Wessel. Any other comments or findings? All right, please vote. That motion has passed. Do we have another one on there? Okay. Thank you. Okay. We will move on to the next case. Case S12742. Could we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to subdivide 8 lots into 1 lot. The petition site is division lots 1Q through 8Q per plat P-61B. The property is zone R3 mixed residential district. No variances or vacations are being requested with this reversion acreage plat. The application requires a public hearing because the land is owned by the municipality of Anchorage and because it increases the possible residential density of the property. The purpose of the preliminary plat is to create a single lot for residential development. The site is bordered by West Northern Lights Boulevard to the north, Barber Street to the east, and an alley to the south, and a privately owned parking lot to the west. The official streets and highways plan identifies West Northern Lights Boulevard and Turnagain Street as collectors. Barber Street is a local road. The department finds that the proposed plat meets all subdivision design and improvement standards in accordance with Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Chapter 8, subdivision standards, subject to the proposed conditions of approval on pages 4 and 5 of the packet. The department's recommending approval of this plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1, 2, and 3. Condition number 1, resolve utility easements as standard. 2, the traffic engineering department requested a condition of approval to resolve with the traffic engineering department the number of anticipated trips to the proposed multifamily development by providing a trip generation summary memorandum written by a traffic engineering professional. And condition of approval 3 is regarding placing plat notes on the plat. The first plat note is recommended also by the traffic engineer. It's to direct vehicular access to West Northern Lights shall be prohibited. And then the second plat note, it comes from Private Development Division of the municipality. Private Development is responsible for reviewing roads and drainage and improvements, road standards. And they requested a plat note stating direct vehicular access to the unnamed alley from Lot 1 shall require peripheral improvements to bring the alley into conformance with current municipal standards. The limits of the improvements shall be between Barber Street and Turnagain Street to provide access and connectivity. The other 2 plat notes are standard about, coming from private development, about raising and lowering your the grade of your property, needing approval from building safety, and you can't obstruct or impede any drainage facilities. With that, my presentation is done, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff from the planning board? Thank you. The hearing is now, would the petitioner come forward, state your name, and if you'd like to reserve any time for rebuttal, please.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, and planning staff. My name is Craig Bennett. That's B-E-N-N-E-T-T. And whatever time I have left, I'll save for rebuttal. And I represent the petitioner tonight, and staff presented this case well, so I'll just be brief. This is a small subdivision of about 1.3 acres in total. And it would typically be a short plat, but since the land is owned by the municipality, that bumps it into a long plat, and we have a public hearing. We're asking to combine 8 lots into 1 lot. This is in the R3 zoning district. And there are no variances or vacations being asked for. There were no objections for this platting action by any of the reviewing agencies. No comments from the community in the staff report. And this conforms to the comprehensive plan and current zoning. I'll just conclude that we agree with all the department recommendations. The department recommends approval of the plat, and I ask that the board approve this subdivision. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions the board may have and save the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Excellent. Do you have 8 minutes and 57 seconds? Do we have any questions of the petitioner from the board? Great. The hearing is now open for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, state and spell your name for the record. Good evening. Go ahead and press the button to light up the mic, please. There you go. Good job.
How's that? Oh, yeah, I can hear myself.
Yes.
All right.
And could you
Yeah.
please state and spell
My
your name?
name is Steve Montooth. I live about 100 yards away. Do you folks have this in front of you?
Sure.
Do you have-
Could you spell your name for the
Yeah,
record, please?
Montooth.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so go ahead. Yes, I believe we have a number of exhibits
These
within
two
the packet.
available? I'd appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
You know, I've been involved in a lot of aspects regarding this development, and platting of this seems to make a lot of sense, as opposed to keeping individual small lots. This was developed in the late 40s, and so we had this whole number of apartments had access to Northern Lights at that point in time. Of course, in the 80s, they changed that, and so there isn't direct access. My biggest concern about this, though, is that there's about 6 car lengths from the alleyway to the light. So any access leaving that to get to Turnagain Street and leaving that alley and going to the light is going to be a real problem traffic-wise. So I understand that maybe that alleyway might be improved, and there might be one-way traffic into that. So that means the traffic to leave would go down to Barbara Street. And after talking with a few people who have property there, I hope if you folks have a moment, you could drive by there. But first of all, I don't know how many cars there are, but I know that on the average, every one-bedroom unit has about 1.6 cars. I'm sorry, every 2-unit bedroom place has about 1.6 cars. So I don't know how many units there are. But if you go down Barber Street, the quickest access to Turnagain Street is going to be 29th, 30th, 31st, and on downwards. Those streets are so narrow, if 2 people are parking on the street, there's maybe room for 1 car to go through. So my biggest concern about this is I don't think that getting out of that area from Barber Street is, you're going to have to develop it. Maybe it has to go clear down to the end of 35th or Brookside or something, but it's not well thought out. And it's going to be a lot of trouble. And I hate to be someone to complain about this, but I've been involved in some aspects through the community council about this, and I have talked to people who have own apartment buildings right near that on Barber Street, and they already talk about a lot of traffic there. So I don't know what to do with this. This is very confusing, and I'm hoping I was going to hear tonight about a way that this can be resolved. So that's enough.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have any questions for him, for the testifier? Thank you for your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Gleason. I'm a member of Turnagain Community Council and have been involved with the Northern Lights upgrades way back in the early 80s or mid-80s and on, where this the apartments that were there that were taken out at that time, and Woodland Park, which was supposed to be designated a park at the time, but never was, and now it's now being sold for this subdivision.
Excuse me, pardon me. Could you spell your name?
Oh, Dan Gleason, Gleason.
And are you a representative of the community council
No,
or
I
just
am not.
yourself?
I am just a private member.
Awesome. All right. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Go ahead.
And,
Sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to
My wife's
interrupt.
the acting president, and she'll testify after I am.
Excellent.
I am concerned about the development that the fire marshal commented that they do not have, they could not comment on this because they do not have jurisdiction over 1, 2, or 3 unit units for this, and I'm concerned that this is going to be more units than 3 units. So I think we're going to have to come back to the fire marshal and get their comments, because it's going to be a higher density than what they can comment on. Because I really don't have any plans right now whether it's going to be 4-plexes or whether it's going to be 6-plexes on these lots. I know it's going to be a very high density because we need housing. No doubt about that. But there's traffic, there's utilities. We don't, when they took out the apartments back in the 80s and relocated them or demolished them, there was no as-built done for the utilities are there. Maybe there's no gas lines there anymore. Maybe there's no sewer or water. That's stuff they're going to have to probably discover when they start digging. So that's going to be an issue. Steve Montooth already said about the traffic. That alleyway is in poor shape, and Barber Street, and we've already had issues on 29th because of the rustic goat, and we're also concerned about a lot of the right-of-way along Northern Lights and going into that, and the landscaping that's there, whether we can preserve that or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the testifier from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you for testifying.
I do have handouts, so I don't know if I can squeeze through here.
Go ahead, as long as you have one for each of us. You have one for each of us, possibly?
They're kind of stacked the way. There's two handouts per person.
Well, half of these got to go this way, so. Do we have enough? Do you have your copy?
I do.
Okay, 'cause
Do you
there's
need
one
more
that says
copies?
Kathy's copy.
I have unhighlighted ones. Dan, you want to bring up more copies?
Yeah, you can, okay.
Sorry, I should have brought more. I was just
we're
highlighting
good.
them over there and only did enough for the board. Excuse me.
Okay. Go ahead, tell us your name. Are you are you speaking as yourself or as part of the community council or?
For Turnagain Community Council.
All right, great. And could you tell us your name and spell it, please?
Yes. Kathy Gleason, Cathygleason. I'm currently acting president of the Community Council. And we have been following this proposal for quite some time. And we're very involved with J.J. Brooks as a developer for the Turnagain Crossing on the west side of Turnagain Street, Rustic Oat and those apartments. So we have quite a history together. But speaking of history, if you'll look at this handout very briefly, that pretty well has documents when the land was acquired and cleared of all private buildings and so forth, residential and commercial, back in the mid-'80s. The intent, so at that time the road was widened, the intent was to have all of the property that was acquired be part of the right-of-way. And a lot of landscaping was put in on both the north and south sides of that road. We worked closely with the consultants and developers and municipality for that specific landscaping. It's lush, it was well designed, and except for some dead spruce trees, it's held up really nice and mature nicely over time. So one of the things that we did in our resolution, which is the second handout, is we did look at this thoroughly. We passed a resolution last year opposing actually the disposal of the land to JJ. We lost on that partially. He wanted to acquire the entire amount of lots in that area. There was a compromise where he got, some of the western half, and including the lots you're being asked to replat and combine. The issues were that it was always meant to be and was used for decades as open space parkland, and that nice landscaping as part of that gave the nice ambiance that we have entering our our Turnagain neighborhood. So fast forward, the mistakes were made. Things should have been done, as was mentioned. It never was dedicated parkland, even though that was the intent. Parkland signage was there for decades, and it was never replatted. And so here we are you're being asked to deal with a plat that's like from the 50s or something. So if you look at page number, let's see, I didn't bring that up. In the application where there's an aerial photo and the overlay of the plats, the lots, you'll see that they overlap with the south side of the landscaping, which is completely contrary to the intent back when the road was redone in the 80s. That landscape needs to be preserved. And so at minimum, we want a note on the replat that all existing landscaping that was done as part of the West Northern Lights upgrade from the 1980s be preserved, retained, maintained by the Parks Department, because it's maintained by the Parks Department now, regardless of ownership. Ideally, we would ask you to move the boundaries of those lots and the replatted single lot to the south to avoid JJ from even owning any of that landscaping. Have all the landscaping be retained as the road right-of-way and public ownership. It's been a really important item for our council and one of our main concerns, in addition to, as was mentioned by previous speakers, traffic. We have had the upgrading of Turnagain Street on our CIP list in the top 5 for decades, and it's been number 2 for several years. And there's no improvements in the 6-year plan. And, but even if the design has already been done, but it won't improve traffic circulation at all. It would just put in sidewalk, lighting, curb and gutter. So that is a poorly conditioned road. The traffic is heavy, and to add a lot more traffic going in and out right across the street from Rustic Oat, which generates its own amount of traffic, as well as all the neighborhood traffic through that area. I think the best phrase I heard in testimony, this has not been well thought out. So at the very least, if you can do some plat notes require, if I can wrap up, please, just require, we asked in our resolution that an existing traffic study be done to document what the problems are now. And then if you approve this plat and the developer goes forward, that before anything happens, we get an anticipated, and I think that was one of the conditions, anticipated traffic impacts as a result of the development. We have not seen any plans. We don't know how dense it'll be, but knowing through verbal discussions with JJ, he will want to fit in as many units as he can on that lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the testifier? Ms. Gleason, go ahead, Suzanne.
It's a little bit difficult to see from the views that I'm having on the map. From what I can tell, it looks like the existing landscaping extends about 15 feet south into the lot. Is that more or less correct?
I have not taken a tape measure out there, so I couldn't say, but just visually, it's clear that the lots that JJ wants to acquire and have as part of his private land overlaps the existing landscaping, which goes against every project that I've ever been involved with, and I'm a longtime community council member and active one, is that the landscaping, road landscaping, is part of the right-of-way. It's not part of a private property to do with what they want to do with it once it's in place.
And it's your belief that he, if he was not restricted by a plat note, would do away with that existing landscaping?
Yes, he verbally told me that himself. Or at least
That's all.
a large majority of it.
Any other questions of the testifier?
Yes,
Go
I have
ahead,
a
Mr.
question.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at the property lines that are adjacent to Northern Lights, where you discuss the landscaping. If I'm looking at this correctly and want to get your take on this, it appears that these property lines are within the right-of-way and still maintaining this vegetative buffer. Are you seeing the same thing, or?
Well, I'm not sure what your question is. The problem is, those lots and the northern boundary of them are based on the 1950s when there was private development and homes and businesses there before West Northern Lights was upgraded and widened. And like I said, it's really unfortunate that once the municipality took out all that land as far as acquired all full lots south of and to the alley of Northern Lights, it should have been replatted, and actually there's verbiage in the documents that it says all municipally owned property acquired through that road project was considered to be right-of-way, because then the intent was to have low-key playground equipment, more landscaping, park-like amenities, because it was supposed to become a dedicated park. Those two key things didn't ever happen, so it's frustrating for you guys to be asked to take, is it 7 lots? I forgot. Multiple lots that show a northern boundary that doesn't make any sense since 1980s when the property was acquired and it's meant to be right away, and that's why they put the landscaping the way they designed it where they did. There was no there weren't any conflicts between private property and where the lot line was and, the road right away, because it didn't exist in reality back then. It's just nobody went and redrew any lines. That's why that's why it's really the best way to deal with this is to move the northern lot lines south, clear of the landscaping, so that the landscaping can be considered appropriately West Northern Lights Road right-of-way in that area. And that way it will, ensure preservation of it as opposed to a plat note. If you go ahead and do it the way it is now on the map, and hope that JJ would abide by the preservation of that. I know he doesn't want to. He wants to maximize as much space as he can for development of housing. And yes, he would take most of it out. As it slopes down, I'm not sure he would take, as if you're familiar with West Northern Lights in that area, it does slope down. He might leave the lower level that's more in elevation of the road and just above it, but everything on top he would wipe out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. Do we have any other, anybody else wishing to testify? So would the petitioner like to come back for rebuttal, please? You have 8 minutes and 57 seconds, please.
Lots of times. Thank you, Craig Bennett with S4 Group, and I'd like to thank the community that came out and stated their concerns tonight. The first concern I'd like to address is about traffic. And this is a platting application, not a development. So we don't know how many units, what they're going to look like. But at that time, traffic will have to approve whatever is submitted. And also, if you look at condition number 2, it does will be a requirement of the plat for traffic to review this. And next one, concern about utilities on site. We have had locates as part of the preliminary plat to find out where utilities were, where gas, electric, and all that. And that will also have to be worked out with any development as this project's move forward. Same with the fire department. The fire will have to review any site plan that's submitted. And on to landscaping. There is landscaping on Northern Lights, and it does come onto this property, I'd like to say 5 feet, but plus or minus 5 feet. It's not onto this property very much, but any development has landscaping required on the boundary, and there will be a requirement per code for landscaping on the north against East Northern Lights, and I believe it's L2 landscaping. I can have planning confirm that. So there's already a landscape requirement per code, and I'd say a plat note typically is not needed for landscaping when code already requires it, and code changes, so code can require more or less in subsequent years. What else? Last thing I'd like to respond to was the plat boundary lines don't change. These are the original lots. They haven't changed since they were originally platted, and since the Muni acquired them in the 80s, now the Muni is in the process of selling them, and they're the same lots and haven't moved. And we can't, I guess, change the lot line by bringing it down without dedicating or, I guess, providing a tract on the north, and I'm pretty sure that Parks would not accept a tract. Just responding to that. So these are the same lots that were originally established. And again, follow up, the planning department recommends approval, and there are no department objections to this subdivision. With that, I'd like to answer any questions the board has.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions of the testifier, of the applicant?
I'm not sure if I should save this for discussion, but I think it's relevant to bring up that there's minimum setback.
Wait. So, do you have a question of the applicant?
Do you care to share what the setback requirements for the buildings are for the residential district that it's in?
So this is an R3 zoning, and I believe against Northern Lights would be considered secondary front in this case. So that we'd need to determine whether that's secondary front or backyard.
So I have it pulled up on my computer here. It looks to me like it would be a minimum of 10 feet, and there's a good argument for 20. From what I can see on the plat map as well as aerial photos, it looks like it barely extends 5, possibly 10 feet into the lot. I believe that the setback requirement would be in excess of that.
Correct.
So I guess that's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
And there'd also be most likely a 10 to 15-foot landscape requirement as part of the development.
Do we have any other questions from the board to the applicant? Great. Do we have any questions from the board to staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks. To staff, my question, if I was listening to some of the feedback from the community, if this was originally seen as some sort of opportunity for park expansion, and I was noticing in the 2040 future land use plan, one of the goals was to, continue, or one of the actions was to expand Parks and Rec, and go in there and do some like house cleaning, cleanup to rezone things where they should be. And I don't know that this should have happened. My question is why did this go to sell? And then of course it's still zoned R3. Was it really meant to be zoned as parkland at some point and it just got put up for sale instead? And is this outside of the scope of this whole thing and I shouldn't be asking?
This is a plat. They're combining 8 lots into one and dedicating right-of-way to the cul-de-sac on Barber Street. That's all that's going on. All the other items are, interesting information or desires by neighbors and those sorts of things. But we believe that all the issues are covered for what would otherwise be an abbreviated plat process reviewed by the platting officer. It's because it's public land that it's before you now. Your question, okay, so why are some of the parks in town have various zoning districts? So the Campbell Creek Park, Valley of the Moon is zoned R2M. That's a multifamily residential district, so like R2 residential, the R significant. So there is an effort to rezone a dedicated parkland in our community to the PR district. It's a big project. We've taken several ordinances rezoning batches of dedicated parkland to the PR district, the Parks and Rec district, or which carries the signifies the dedicated parkland. This, of course, isn't dedicated parkland. And like I said, many of our parks have various zoning districts. Was that? I mean, it's some interesting sort of information that we have. We have parks that are dedicated by the assembly, have been adopted to be dedicated parkland, can only be used as park, but they weren't rezoned yet. Some have been rezoned, some have not. We have some parks that haven't been dedicated by ordinance to become dedicated parkland, but they're municipally owned and they're not dedicated parkland, but they may be used as parkland. I don't know, the new Nac Valley Little League, baseball diamonds, maybe that's zoned R1, and the Little League's been there for 50 years, but it's not dedicated parkland. I don't know, there's all kinds of permutations of that. Okay, so I kind of went on about that. If you have a follow-up.
Yeah, I misunderstood what that meant, the cleaning up of the zoning. That makes a lot more sense. The only follow-up I had is this is a privately owned lot now, right? It was purchased from the muni. We're through that? Or is this still owned by the muni? I think that's my confusion. Who owns this lot? Or this group of lots?
Yeah, I believe, and this would be a better question for a petitioner, so correct me if I'm wrong, Craig. This is municipal-owned land, and the Assembly has approved the disposal of the land or sale of this public land to a private person, and authorized that person to make application to re-subdivide the property in this way. So I think it's currently municipal owned, but we have a project here, or potential for a project to sell public land and to a proven housing developer, a multifamily housing developer. Those are sort of big picture things beyond the scope of the Platting Board because these issues came before the Assembly. But am I wrong in the way I stated that, who owns it?
You're correct.
Okay, cool. Now, if it pleases the board, I would like to address some of the comments that were raised to try and give you the planning department's position on some of the questions that were raised. Mr. Chair, do you want me to speak on some of those, or no?
Francis, briefly, please.
Oh, okay. Let's see. One of the issues was the state fire marshal commented, no comment. We make a point, every comment that we receive, we include in your packet. Everything that's in my file is before you. We just send everything to you. But the state fire marshal doesn't comment on anything within the boundaries of the municipal fire service area. So they would have no comment on this. Now, we have talked with the municipal fire prevention office, not the state fire marshal, that has no jurisdiction and would have no comment on this. And they're reviewing this. There is a fire hydrant in Barber Street. So just sort of checking off some of these real quickly. Fire wouldn't be, one of the comments from the public was concerned, why doesn't fire care about this? They do. It's a different agency that commented. Our municipal fire prevention will review it at a later stage with the future development. This development has already dedicated all the right-of-way to West Northern Lights Boulevard that they would be required to do. There is no landscape easement on property. The site perimeter landscape requirement for the R3 zoning district abutting a collector street is L1 visual enhancement landscaping. That's 8 foot of trees and shrubs, a visual enhancement landscape standard. So that will be required at a minimum with the future development. There could be more. There will be setbacks. This is sort of an oddly shaped lot in a way because its frontage is to a collector street, which it won't have access to, but we believe that the setback, just starting with setback to West Northern Lights would be a 5-foot setback and no structures from the north property line adjoining West Northern Lights. But that's kind of my guess because it's kind of hard to tell at this point. Also, the setback could be greater depending on the type of multifamily development that's proposed. So that's sort of me guessing about setbacks, but there will be a setback. Let's see. In terms of landscaping, there will be landscaping required. I think I answered the park question. The comment that was raised about the assembly and disposal of the land, I just wanted to state that I understand the community council and Ms. Gleason's concern. I listened to that meeting. I wasn't working, but out of interest, I was following things, and I know how that surprised the community council and Diane Holmes, and you showed up at the meeting, and so I've been following that just out of as a private citizen, and so I understand your concerns. I also wanted to commit to Mr. Montooth that this recorded meeting, I will forward the audio for his testimony to Brad Coy, the municipal traffic engineer, to Randy Ribble, assistant traffic engineer, and to Travis Just, assistant traffic engineer, so that they, those comments and concerns that they stated as neighbors to this development will be forwarded to our municipal engineering department to take that under consideration when they review that condition of approval number 2 in your packet. Sorry the time I took up, Mr. Porter. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your summary of the events. So, I mean, in summary, and correct me if I'm wrong, this platting action is taking R3 residential land and replatting it into a new configuration that still meets R3 code.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? For staff or for, this is our last chance, so. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Wessel.
I guess it's a comment for staff. So I'm hearing you do not think it necessary to dedicate a vegetative screening easement at this moment because development will require it.
I think that's correct. The way that I framed my comment was to say that site perimeter landscaping in the R3 zoning district is required per the zoning, and so the subdivision regulations do not require the dedication of any landscape easements with this plat. However, regardless of any easements, there will be site perimeter landscaping along the property line required, and that's required of all R3 zoning. Whether it covers all the landscaping that Ms. Gleason was talking about, I couldn't say, but this is a, you know, like a fee simple lot that is going to be developed for residential, and they have the full use of the property and only limited by the zoning requirements for multifamily housing and the landscape requirements in Chapter 7, the site development design standards. So they'll have to comply with everything in code. She makes a valid point that the road project installed landscaping, and some of it is outside of the right-of-way and on property. And she believes very strongly, as does her community council, in preserving that landscaping. However, it's on property.
Thank you, staff. Any other questions of staff? Of the petitioner? Thank you. The public hearing for this is closed. What is the will of the body? May we have a motion, please? It's been moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Mr. Young. Ms. Smith, would you care to state your motion, please?
I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1, 2, and 3 on pages 4 and 5 of the staff report.
And would you care to speak to your motion?
The platting action is for subdivision 8 lots into 1 and is fulfilling code.
Mr. Young, would you care to speak to your second?
Yes. I understand that this is a frustrating movement of essentially parkland towards development, and it's going to create friction within the community. As communities grow like Anchorage, which actually has a fantastic amount of green space, it's frustrating for neighbors to see that, have more busy streets, less parkland available. I do think it's important to note that there is some parkland to the east of Barber Street that has been preserved. That being said, you know, Anchorage is in a housing crisis. We don't have enough room for the people that are here, and we need to continue to make room like these developments that are occurring. And because of that, I will be supporting this motion. I believe all of the requirements for this platting action have been met. And at the end of the day, the Assembly is going to make the decisions as to how this will be moved forward.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Do we have any findings or comments? I'll put on the record that what we have before us is a platting action to take residentially zoned land, turn it into a larger lot that can be used much more efficiently rather than a whole bunch of small lots with a whole bunch of individual buffers and boundaries and so forth. And return it to its original intent of housing, and in this case, potentially more efficient housing that will still meet the R3 standard. And so the finding, notwithstanding, we've heard community council that wanted to have it preserved as parkland, and we respect that. But in this case, the intent of R3 is to have residential housing, and there's going to be municipal requirements applied to that, including buffer zones and traffic, and at the end of the day, that is the intended purpose of the property. And in municipal hands, it can't do that. In private hands, they can develop it. So therefore, I would intend to vote in the positive. Thank you. Let's vote, please. That motion has passed. Okay. On to the next case. We have case number S12744. May we have staff's presentation of the case?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a request to subdivide one existing lot into one new lot with the vacation of a portion of the Spenard Road right-of-way dedicated per Plat P298C. This request is being made for the current business owners to retain a portion of the right-of-way for their commercial property and to allow the installation of a permanent sign for the business. A temporary sign permit has been issued by Building Services. Proposed Lot 38A will continue to meet the minimum requirements in the B3 General Business District. The existing right-of-way for Spenard Road exceeds the minimum width requirement for a minor arterial Class 2 as classified in the official Streets and Highways Plan, requiring 80 feet of dedicated right-of-way. The proposed vacation reverts the right-of-way to the original northern property boundary and results in a right-of-way width of 81.6 feet for this portion of Spenard Road. Municipal reviewing agencies have no objections to the proposed vacation or preliminary plat. As of this writing, no comments have been received from the public, and the Spenard Community Council did not provide comment. Reviewing agency comments are detailed on page 2 through 4 of this report. All of the municipal vacation standards have been met by this application. The applicant has demonstrated that the right-of-way is in surplus of municipal need. Spenard Road, again, is classified as a Class 2 minor arterial requiring 80-foot minimum width for right-of-way. The proposed vacation results in a right-of-way width of 81.6 feet. This vacation will not have any impact on traffic circulation. The site will remain accessible from Spenard Road to the north and Breezewood Drive to the east. This vacation will not result in a realignment of any existing right-of-way and does not impact circulation. Proposed Lot 38A retains physical and legal access to Spenard Road to the north and Breezewood Drive to the east. Municipal reviewing agencies have expressed no objection to the request to vacate this portion of Spenard Road right-of-way with the requested conditions and plat notes. The utility companies will have the opportunity to review the proposed plat and request necessary easements. Therefore, the Planning Department recommends approval of this request to vacate a portion of Spenard Road right-of-way and approval of the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions on page 5 and 6 of this report. However, Planning does want to amend condition B2 to read as follows: dedication of a landscaping easement for the landscaping adjacent to Spenard Road. And the reason for that modification is that we received more detailed as-built that provided information that the sidewalk would still be within the right-of-way. Thank you, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of staff from the board? Great. Would the petitioner please come forward, state your name, and if you'd like to reserve any time for your rebuttal?
Figure it out eventually. Good evening, I'm Jonathan Lang, L-A-N-G, professional land surveyor, president of Lang & Associates. I'm presenting tonight on behalf of the property owners. I appreciate your time. I will be brief. The client is seeking to vacate the right-of-way so that he can put in a sign. We thank staff for their presentation and agree with their recommendations. And thank you for your consideration. We reserve the remainder of our time for rebuttal.
You have 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Do we have any questions of the petitioner from the board? Go ahead, Mr. Gold.
How big is this sign?
4 by 8.
Oh, not so bad.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. The hearing is now open for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, state and spell your name for the record. Seeing none, do you have any rebuttal? Thank you. Any last questions of the petitioner? Public hearing is now closed. What is the will of the body? May we have a motion, please? It's been moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Mr. Young. Ms. Smith, would you care to state the motion and speak to your motion, please?
I move to approve the request to vacate a portion of the Spenard Road. Let me just start all over. I move to approve the request to vacate a portion of the Spenard Road right-of-way per plat P-298C, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months and any time extensions. I have no comments.
Mr. Young, would you care to speak to your section, please?
I intend to support this motion.
Thank you. Any findings or comments?
I have
Go
one
ahead, Ms.
finding. Even with the vacation, I intend to support this because right now the right-of-way is currently 137.6 feet, and even with this proposed vacation, the right-of-way will be 81.5 feet, which is still an access to the needs of the public.
Thank you. And I would add to the finding that the public sidewalk will remain within the right-of-way, so it will not affect the public access. Please vote. That motion has passed. May we have the next motion, please? It's been moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Mr. Young. Ms. Smith, would you care to state your motion and speak to your motion, please?
I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1 through 4 on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report. Condition B2 will be revised to read, dedication of a landscaping easement for the landscaping adjacent to Spenard Road. I have no comments.
Mr. Young, would you care to speak to your second?
In accordance with staff recommendations, I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you so much. Any comments or findings? Okay, please vote. That motion has passed. Excellent. So we're moving on to the final case.
So I had just realized that the petitioner for this case is Mr. Jeremiah Benson. I have known Mr. Benson for at least 15 years, and I do consider him my friend. I did not realize that earlier for the disclosures list. I do feel that I could still act impartial to this plat approval, but I would request approval from the platting board to go ahead and stay and vote on this case.
We have a card for this.
There's a...
Point of information. I believe that we will be able to pass it regardless of her abstaining.
It'd still be short. So then we'd have to. So we have a kind of a little questionnaire, and I would like you to walk through that if we can find it. I used to have this thing kind of hanging around. Ah, all right. All right. Could you have her read that? And tell us if you can answer in the affirmative. And so read the statements and then.
Okay, so conflicts of interest as defined by AMC 3.60.070 is that if the member or immediate family member has a personal or financial interest in the involvement in the case, preventing said member from remaining impartial and fairly evaluating the case. Based on this circumstance, I do not have any personal nor financial interest, nor involvement, nor previous knowledge of this case. And I can remain impartial and fairly evaluate the case.
Great.
Yep.
So then we need a motion. He'll type up the motion and. For information, Robert's Rules of Orders is that we always put a motion out in the affirmative, and then we either vote for it or against it. So regardless of our belief, we put it to a motion in the positive. So we would move to direct. Sorry. Did you get the direct, it hasn't shown up. Do we have to clear the first one? Or can you pull it back? Sorry. Apologize for the delay. All right, well, we'll go with that. It has been moved by Mr. Young and seconded by Ms. Jessica Smith to direct Ms. Wessel to participate in case S12746 based on her statement that she doesn't have any personal or financial bias. Do we have any findings? Or, I'm sorry. Would Mr. Young like to state the motion and speak to the motion?
I believe that Ms. Wessel will be able to operate impartially. I also believe that there is pretty cut and dry rules and regulations around these things, and she should be able to ascertain whether or not this platting action has met the requirements. So I will be in support of this motion.
Ms. Smith, would you care to speak to your second?
No, I have no comment.
Great. Please vote. Yeah, you have to. I think I'm good. I'll just. That motion has passed. All right. All right. Thank you very much for your disclosure. All right. So, we are looking at case S12746. Would staff care to give us their presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a request to subdivide 8 lots into with vacation of 60 feet of right-of-way for Raven Street. The subdivision plat is being proposed to accommodate the expansion of Chuyak AK Storage, a storage unit business. With construction and expansion of this existing storage facility and adjustment of the property housing an apartment complex to include half of the right-of-way for Raven Street. The property was zoned as CEB3 General Business District in 1984, and the subdivision meets the minimum lot size and width requirements of AMC 2110-060 for Chuyak River. There were no objections by the reviewing agencies to the platting action. Conformance with adopted plans. The preliminary plat appears to conform with the petition site's classification as shown in the 2006 Chuyak River Comp Plan, as well as Goal 2B for commercial industrial development to promote continued use and expansion of commercial properties. The subdivision will realign access to the property, and consolidation of the lots will facilitate an orderly and efficient layout with the proposed expansion of that said storage facility. All lots in the subdivision will be provided access via publicly dedicated right-of-way. And staff analysis and vacation of the public right-of-way. Condition 1 has been met. The right-of-way is surplus to current and future public needs. Proposed Lot 14A will retain access to Homestead Road, and proposed Lot 15A will have access to Homestead Road, and a new driveway entrance will be constructed in the future. The consolidation of lots eliminate the need for Raven Street. Staff finds Condition 2 has been met. Raven Street is not classified by the official Streets and Highways Plan. Staff finds condition 3 has been met. The subject right-of-way is not located on the half-mile grid, as well as 4, Raven's not on the quarter-mile grid. And in condition 5, staff has found that the vacation will not have any impact on traffic circulations. Staff finds condition 6 has been met. The vacation will not result in any realignment of an existing right-of-way. Agencies have expressed no objection to the request to vacate the right-of-way of Raven Street within the proposed Earl Ray subdivision. The utility companies will have the opportunity to review the proposed plat and request easements as necessary. Therefore, staff believes that the right-of-way is in excess of municipal need and recommends approval of the vacation and plat subject to A and B found on page 7 of the staff packet, as well as page 8 of the staff packet through 4. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the petitioner's representative is here tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the board to staff? Great. Petitioner, please come forward, state your name, and if you'd like to reserve any time for rebuttal.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, and planning staff. My name is Craig Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T-T with S4 Group, and I'll just save whatever time I have left for rebuttal. I represent the petitioner, and the professionals with Triad Engineering are here also to help answer any civil-related questions. And I'll just briefly touch on some of the main points of this subdivision. Staff did a good job covering the case. This is a request to subdivide 8 lots into 2 with a vacation of right-of-way. Total area of the site's about 4.6 acres. The zoning is commercial CE B3. There were no objections for this platting action by any of the reviewing agencies, no objections from the community. This conforms to the comprehensive plan and current zoning. And I'll conclude that we agree to all the department recommendations. The department recommends approval of the plat and vacation and ask that the board approve this subdivision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 3 seconds. Do we have any questions from the board to the petitioner? Okay, thank you. At this time, hearing is now open for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, state and spell your name for the record. We have no one that wishes to testify. Do you have any rebuttal? None? Okay. Do we have any last questions before we close the testimony? The public hearing is now closed. What is the will of the body? Let's please offer a motion. It's been seconded by, moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Mr. Mormon. Ms. Smith, would you care to state your motion and speak to your motion, please?
I move to approve the request to vacate the right-of-way within the parcel subject parcel for Raven Street, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months and any time extensions. No comment.
Mr. Mormon, would you care to speak to your second?
I will also motion to approve the request to vacate the right-of-way within the subject parcel for Raven Street, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months and any time extensions.
Thank you. Do we have any findings or discussion? Very well. Please vote. That motion has passed. It's been moved by Mr. Young and seconded by Mr. Mormon. Mr. Young, would you care to state your motion and speak to your motion?
In accordance with the staff's recommendation, I will be supporting this motion.
Would you state the motion, please?
Sorry. The plat, I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to the conditions 1 and 4 on pages 7 and 8 of the staff report.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have any discussion or findings? Please vote. That motion has passed. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, it is.
May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion so moved by Mr. Zach Young and seconded by Ms. Stacy Wessel. Any opposed?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good, that motion has passed.